Mud crabs provide a valuable commercial fishery in Australia. They generate at least $100 million in retail and restaurant sales every year. Many people are involved in the process of putting a mud crab on the consumer's plate, from catchers to transport operators to wholesalers to retailers to restaurant chefs. Most mud crabs travel to their final point of sale alive, and the quality of the crab at its final destination, its liveliness, and its meat quality and meat quantity have a major impact on price, or even whether it can be sold, because poor quality mud crabs may be rejected by buyers. Historically, there have been different interpretations of quality grading between crabbers and wholesalers across Australia. Just what does a top quality mud crab mean? And, more importantly, what constitutes a poor quality crab that buyers will reject and refuse to pay for? This has been open to a wide range of personal views, has been highly emotive, and has greatly impacted on revenue and relationships throughout the supply chain. Well, now something has been done about it. Industry players have got together to agree on a national quality grading system for live mud crabs. This video is part of the process of informing the rest of the players in the live mud crab catching and marketing chain about the agreed grading system. The problems with varying mud crab grading were highlighted through two research projects funded by the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation, or FRDC. These projects aim to, first, determine best handling practices for live mud crabs, and second, inform everyone in the supply chain about the results. The two projects indicated that many active industry members along the supply chain, throughout the various jurisdictions, were unclear of grading parameters for live mud crabs. There were different perceptions between catchers, between buyers, and between jurisdictions, for example, between the Northern Territory and Queensland. To address this, a national system was proposed to ensure catchers, buyers, and marketers had a consistent, workable grading system for the entire industry, from pot to plate. To assist with the development of such a system, the FRDC supported an independently facilitated national forum. It was entitled Using Industry Expertise to Build a National System for Grading of Live Mud Crabs. It brought together people from throughout the supply chain and from across Australia to develop an industry-driven, objective and mutually agreed Australian grading system for live mud crabs. As a result, 22 participants covering the major state and territory key industry groups, some regional centres and key supply chain participants, catchers, distributors and buyers, attended the forum at the Sydney Fish Market in January 2012. Through a process of consensus, they developed the national grading system outlined in this video. Always handle crabs gently. Hold both sides, not just by one claw or limb, as this can cause the crab to drop the claw or limb with a subsequent decrease in value. Mud crabs have very powerful claws, and they can cause major damage if they latch onto you. Always take care when handling them, and at all times keep your body away from the nippers. If the crab is untied and you try to handle the crab, remember the claws can reach a long way. Only put your hands in the areas where you can't be reached. This flowchart provides an overview of the steps involved in grading your live mud crab. Now we will examine each of these steps one by one. Is it a mud crab? The colour of a mud crab can vary greatly from light green through blue, purple all the way to dark brown. This is generally to do with the environment the crab has lived in. A mud crab has large claws and 9 similarly sized spines on each side of the carapace. If not a mud crab, it must be rejected. Is it alive? If a mud crab is dead, its legs hang loosely and its eyes don't move. If it has been dead for a period of time, it will have an unpleasant smell. If it is dead, it must be rejected. Is it legal? Each state and territory has its own set of rules that apply to the taking or selling of mud crabs. These often relate to the size of the crab, maybe the sex that is allowed to be kept, whether a female has eggs, or the degree of flex of the shell. If it is not legal, it must be rejected. The following defects can lead to a need to reject the crab or consider downgrading it. A bleeding crab will die quickly. Check if there is visible blood on the mud crab. This is a thick liquid ranging from clear to blue and even orange. Significant? Reject. Slight? Consider other grades. A deformed shell can be caused by a number of factors and may influence the way buyers and consumers purchase. If significant, reject. If slight, consider other grades. There is only one known parasite that could influence quality, and this is commonly known as loxy. It appears as a mass under the flap and at times can be confused for an egg-bearing female. Loxy affects growth and the reproduction of crabs and the meat quality. If it's evident, reject. Although unlikely, possible contamination could occur during the movement of crab through the supply chain and could include fuel or some chemical. Check by smelling or feel. If evident, reject. As crabs get older, their shells can get wear and tear marks from feeding, fighting and mating. This indicates the crab has not molted recently and could potentially have little meat content. If significant, reject. If slight, consider other grades. Crabs can get damaged by a number of factors and may influence the way buyers and consumers purchase. If significant, reject. If slight, consider other grades. Crabs can show frothing around their mouth parts, and it can be an indicator of poor condition and may mean they will not survive long. The likelihood of mortality from this relates to the time left for the mud crab in the supply chain. If it still has to undertake significant travel, there is a strong chance the crab will not survive. If the froth is black and yellow, reject. If the froth is clear, consider other grades and the time left in the supply chain. At times, dead crabs may become fly-blown, and this can spread to other crabs. Check carefully for any infestation. If evident, reject. As crabs get older, their claw teeth can get wear and tear marks from feeding. This indicates the crab has not molted recently and could potentially have little meat content. Consider other grades. Liveliness. The market for mud crabs is overwhelmingly for live product, and research shows that mud crabs travel very well this way if cared for properly. A mud crab that is lively is very desirable in the market and generally equates to longer shelf life and is a stronger animal. To test for liveliness, you hold the crab and see if the legs try and push back against you, or the tips of the legs try to dig in. If placed on the ground, the crab will try to walk away. If you move your hand or make other movement near the eyes, there will be a very quick reaction of the eye stalks. If the crab is untied, it will use its claws to attempt to nip you, so beware. If it is not lively, it may be best to reject the mud crab. This is based on the amount of time still left in the supply chain. Also, consider other grades. 2 claws. Mud crabs always have 2 claws unless they've lost one through some trauma when in the wild. Mud crabs have a response to danger where they can drop their limb. This doesn't cause the animal any harm. 1-clawed crabs are still very marketable and have different names in different regions. For example, single claw, 1 claw, grubbers or diggers. If a crab only has a single claw, grade as single claw. 30% size. 2-clawed crabs always have claws that are not exactly the same size but are comparable in size. Compare the 2 claws to see if 1 claw is 30% or less the size of the other. If 1 claw is 30% or less the size of the other, then grade it as single claw. Legs or flippers missing. Mud crabs lose legs due to trauma in the wild. Mud crabs have a response to danger where they can drop their limbs and it doesn't cause the animal any harm. Mud crabs with legs missing are still very marketable, but the buyers need to be aware of this damage as it may reduce the value of the crab. If a total of 3 or more legs or flippers are missing, the esky or carton should be labelled missing legs. Shell flex. Shell flex, or the lack of it, is one of the key means to determine the potential quality of a mud crab. With female mud crabs, there may also be a related clicking sound from the shell when testing for flecks. Mud crabs must molt, replace their shell, to grow in size, and when they have recently changed shell, the shell is very soft and the crab is full of seawater, not meat. However, over a short time, only a few weeks, the crab shell gets harder and the flesh inside the body and claws changes from being quite watery and mushy and representing only a small percentage, perhaps 15 to 20% of the total weight of the animal, to eventually completely filling the claws and body with firm, succulent meat that represents up to 30 to 35% of the total body weight of a crab. How to sex a mud crab. The shells harden in different ways for males and females, so you need to be able to determine the sex of a mud crab before being able to test the level of shell flex. Male and female mud crabs are very easy to differentiate, and the simplest way is to look at the underside of the animal and compare the shape and size of the abdominal flap. Simply turn the crabs over and check. Male mud crabs have a narrow, triangular-shaped flap. Females have a large, rounded, pigmented abdominal flap. Grade crabs into male or females. The amount of flex evident in male mud crabs is measured on the top of the carapace and on the underside in two separate tests. To test if the top carapace flexes, hold the crab in your palms and then place your thumbs on the carapace in line with the widest part of the carapace and where the string is, or would be, if the crab was tied up. Press gently. Pressing gently initially means that if the crab shell is soft, you will not cause any shell damage. If the shell has no give, you can press firmly to see if there is any shell flex. If there is any flex in the top carapace, the grade is C. To standardise the way to test shell flex on the underside, bottom carapace, in male mud crabs, hold the crab in both hands, with your palms facing upwards and the abdominal flap of the crab facing upwards. Hold the crab as described above and then place your thumbs on the middle segments adjacent to the second walking legs and either side of the flap. Press gently. Pressing gently initially means that if the crab shell is soft, you will not cause any shell damage. If the shell has no give, you can then press firmly to see if there is any shell flex on either side. If you wish, you can test each of the 6 segments, but the middle segment is the last one to harden up, and if it is solid, the others will also be, unless they've been damaged by previous thumb tests. If the shell flexes at all on any segment, grade is B. If the shell has no flex on any segment, the grade is A. The amount of flex evident in female mud crabs is measured only on the top of the carapace. Also, when you press the shell, if it is very recently molted, sometimes there is a very audible click. To standardise the way to test shell flex on the top carapace in a female mud crab, hold the crab in both hands, palms facing upwards. To test, hold the crab as above and then place your thumbs on the carapace in line with the widest part of the carapace and where the string is, or would be, if the crab was tied up. Press gently. Pressing gently initially means that if the crab shell is soft, you will not cause any shell damage. If the shell has no give, you can then press firmly to see if there is any shell flex and an associated clicking noise. If there is a clicking noise when pressing the top carapace, the grade is C. If the shell flexes at all, the grade is B. If the shell has no flex, the grade is A. This video has shown you step by step how to grade your live mud crab. It is very easy to do, so remember to grade your crabs into A, B and C so that your customers know what they are getting. Getting a consistent grading message along the supply chain means we will all be talking the same language. Appreciative thanks for the support for this project from the Australian Government through the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation. We acknowledge the support and input during development of this video from the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, Queensland, the Sydney Fish Market, the Australian Mud Crab Industry Reference Group and Ocean Watch Australia.